I'm Stephanie, and this is my husband, Michael.
Can you speak a tiny bit louder?
Yes, I'm sorry, I'm Stephanie, and this is Michael, my husband.
And you have 2 children. And who's the lovely lady behind you?
And this is our precious friend,
I'm the last
Lindsay,
appointment for the day.
and the last appointment for the day.
So we're going to do your story after this.
After them, but we overlap.
We overlap in a lot.
So are we going to mould it into one, or is it 2 different stories?
I'll go next, but I'm here to, if she wants me to chip in on anything, I will.
Okay,
Yes.
got it.
I'll
Okay.
hang
All
out
right.
here.
So you 2, were you anti-vaxxers? Have you always been anti-vax? Are you just crazy nutbags?
No, we didn't.
Well, I am a crazy
Yeah.
nutbag, but I'm not.
No, anti-vaxxing nutbag. Did you not want to vaccinate your children when you first met?
No, I didn't know that people did that. I didn't know that there was anti-vaccine.
Had you heard of people that didn't vaccinate their children?
No, when
Really?
what I had told Michael when, and I look back at this moment too, like, why didn't I dig more? When I was pregnant with Annie,
Is Annie the eldest?
Annie's my oldest. She's 5, and I have a friend of mine who's much older and had 5 kiddos, and she didn't vaccinate for a really long time. And I remember her telling me that, and I respect her a lot, but she homeschooled for a while, and then once she put her kids in public school, she did vaccinate them, and she did it one at a time. And I remember thinking about that before we had Annie, but briefly. I didn't think it was. My exact conversation with Michael was, did you know that, so-and-so didn't vaccinate for a while?
I'm pretty sure I'd call you a crazy nutbag.
No. No, I mean, we didn't even know, people did it. And then it was just kind of like this, well, we are vaccinated and we're fine, let's not try to fix a system that's not broken. We didn't know there was a broken system.
So you didn't really have an opinion, really, that much?
Yeah. We know.
So, a doctor's a doctor. What do you do?
Me? I am
Yeah.
in sales.
You're in sales,
I
you're...
was a teacher.
Everyone's stay in lane, and if a doctor says you need to be vaccinated, so be it. Why would you even question it?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't have a whole lot of experience with dealing with doctors' things for myself, and I just never thought to question. My mom has multiple sclerosis, and she would talk about some of that frustration, but I was young and was like, is that just my mom, being that way? And but we didn't have an opinion. No. When Annie was born, she was born.
Did you get vaccinated when you were pregnant with her?
I don't believe so.
It's amazing how many people can't remember. You're not on your own.
Yeah.
I'm just amazed, because now that we know what we know.
Yes, exactly.
But we were all there.
Yeah, it's so true.
Depends on the doctor. Might have to go back and check the notes.
With my son, I know I did. I got the flu. I didn't get the DTaP because I had gotten that not long before I got pregnant with him. I had put it off after I had her because they tried to give it to me in the hospital.
Did you make him go and get the flu and the DTaP?
Yes.
Yeah.
I did. I sure did.
Because, tell me why.
Because the doctors told us to do that. They said, you have to get this, otherwise your kids will
Now,
catch.
did you make any of your other
Christmas.
family members who wanted to hold your babies go and get it?
I didn't. That we were told to do that. To me, that was just a little too much. I asked him at one point, I was like, do you think, your parents would? And he's like, I'm not asking. And I was like,
Good
okay.
for you.
Yeah. I mean, we didn't get them to, but we were
So
advised
you went
to do
and
that.
had flu and DTaP.
Oh, you're gonna pick
Are
at
you
some scabs
okay?
here. Yeah. No.
alright?
I think. The last time before that time, the last time I got the flu shot, that was the last time I had flu symptoms. So I was like, I don't see any reason why I'm getting a flu shot. And she's like, well, we don't.
And
want
I remember
kids
when I
to
had you
so.
get it, you
Alright, whatever.
you had some symptoms
So I took
too.
it.
Yeah, because you so want to be like the great parent, don't you? You want to do everything
Happy wife,
perfect.
happy life.
Yeah. Yeah. We read all the
But you
books.
didn't get sick, so you're okay.
Mhm.
Yeah, okay. So you have this beautiful baby.
Yes, she's perfect. She was breech in my tummy, and we tried to do like a version to turn her, and we couldn't get her to turn, so we had a C-section. We had her on a Thursday afternoon, and we were all just enamored with her. She was perfect and healthy, and 7 pounds 3 ounces, and I had read all the books, and I was really wanting to breastfeed. We had met with a lactation consultant before, because I had so many friends that said, we struggle with this, it's so hard. And I was like, I want a support system before this starts. So if it starts to go down the drain, I have somebody that I can call. And so she was nursing great. I was so relieved. And we had a wonderful, beautiful night. I was hooked up to everything because I had a C-section. Her nurse came in the next morning and was just parading her around the nurse station and oogling over her. And the doctor came in, pediatrician, and he was recommended by the OB that I loved, and he had been a pediatrician for 30 years, and really wonderful man. He's the kind of man that would sit down with you and a lot of time talking to you and getting to know you. And he as he got to the end of our conversation, he was like, okay, he's like, we kind of recommend the Hep B vaccine for babies at this age, and we're like, okay, sign us up, we'll do it. And he goes, really?
Did you even know what the Hep B was?
Oh. No idea. No, I didn't know it was something.
Were we even told what vaccines we were getting?
No, we were. We were told Hep B,
that.
and I'm sure he probably said vitamin K. I just particularly remember that. And I remember he started bringing up, we weren't questioning anything. And he brought up, the Andy Wakefield thing was he ended up being, convicted of fraud, and, he was paid to do that or something. And I didn't even know who that was. And I didn't know what he was talking about. And I was like, oh, well, we're going to vaccinate, And so they gave her the Hep B vax in the hospital. And that was about 7:30 in the morning. And by 10:30 that morning, she was arching her back, clenching her fists. I didn't think I was going to cry. I'm sorry. She was screaming. I'm crying now because I know what that means. And I didn't. And non-stop. She was inconsolable the whole day. And she stopped nursing. And this sweet nurse that was there was trying to help us with all that. And she didn't know what to do. And she was concerned, but, just no one knew what to do. And this was in the hospital. And the doctor, the pediatrician, came in the next day, and he said, so the nurses tell me yesterday was really rough. She had a really hard day. The day before that, he had said, I've been a doctor for 30 years, and when you see a baby's demeanor, newborn, you can tell that that's just who they are. Like, they really, and you have such a daughter with such a pleasant, sweet demeanor, and she's going to be a sweet, easy baby. And he came in the next day, and he said, I heard about what happened yesterday. And he said, that's very unfortunate. It looks like you're going to have a colicky baby. And so throughout the rest of the hospital stay, I pumped and, attached a little tube to my finger that we taped to it. And then I would put the breast milk in a syringe and feed her with the tube and the breast milk, and this went on for weeks. And the lactation consultant that we originally had talked to came over, and she checked to see if there was a tongue tie or something else that was causing her to be so fussy and not to eat and to be struggling. And we tried all different positions, and so it was just a lot of pumping and a lot of syringe feeding. And so I just kind of, and I was Googling, like, what can I do? How can I help her? At about 3.5 weeks, the intensity of it grew. She went from calming down to fussy to back arching, screaming, blood curdling screams. Like, that's when the blood curdling screams started. She would be so red and purple from screaming because she couldn't catch her breath. And it went on for weeks. At first I would call and I would say, she's crying. I didn't know. I wasn't dramatic enough, I guess. And I would call and say, it's non-stop, it's all day, it's all night. And they would just say, well, babies cry. And then after a while was, maybe she has reflux. Let's try her on some Prevacid. And it was like a week and a half on Prevacid.
Wait, what is that stuff?
It's Prevacid is a proton pump inhibitor for reflux. It's it keeps the acid in their stomach from.
So you just put it in there.
You dissolve it. It comes in a Solutab form, and you dissolve it in water and put it in a little syringe and stick it in their mouth.
Nice.
Yep. it's most every child probably has it these days. It's just, to be honest, a lot of them do. And so we did that. Things weren't getting much better. The lactation consultant said, "Hey, read this book. It's called Colic Solved." And you know, he recommends removing milk and soy and the top allergens. You know, remove that from your diet. I ended up doing a total elimination diet. And I remember before that time, I just would tell Michael, I was like, she just screams and she cries. I can't get her to look at me. You know, she's like, she doesn't even know I'm here. And some of the books I was reading was like, you know, they may not make eye contact till they're a couple months old, which I don't. After having my son, I don't really know that that's true. And around 6 weeks old, I remember she looked at me and she smiled, and we were making progress. She was getting better, and she was starting to sleep a little bit better. I was holding her up in a chair every single night for the moments that she would sleep. I was just constantly holding her. This balance and hold was nonstop. And we went in for her 2-month shots. And so by this time, I'm conditioned. I have a colicky baby. All the time. This is what I can expect. It'll go away when it goes away. And so we go in for her 2-month shots. At that point, I had not even thought about the shot she had in the hospital. I would have never associated that's even a possibility. And she has her 2-month shots, and any progress that we made just went out the window. It was like taking 9 steps backward, and the screaming and the crying and inconsolable, everything came back. Having to feed her, pumping and syringe feeding her with the tube, all of that came back for about 3 weeks. And then we were able to start making progress again. And I'm still pumping, and I could bottle feed her and bounce her if I could get her to take a bottle that way. And so I felt like we went into our 4-month shots, and I'm going, hey, this happened at 2 months. Like, this just keeps happening. Is this going to happen again? And no, you know, this can't happen. This doesn't happen with shots. And we do her 4-month shots, and it all happens again. And I remember by the time when I went in for her 6-month shots, it was again the same thing. We made 3 steps forward and 9 steps backward. And so we're starting to progress again before we go into her 6-month shots. And at that point, she was late in the appointment that we can make for her. We had moved in that time period. And I had gotten her to start breastfeeding. Like, she would actually breastfeed from me at 6 months. And so I wasn't having to pump. And I had her eating, you know, rice cereal and mashed, you know, green beans and bananas and squash and sweet potatoes.
And cheddar cheese.
Not at that point. No, not at that point. So she was about 7.5 months old, and I remember going into that appointment dreading it. Because I'm like, this, every time we come in and we get these shots, she's just in pain. And at that point, I knew what the shots were doing, that they were causing her pain. But I was like, I guess that she's just more sensitive to it. And I guess that she seems to recover. So and again, I knew nothing about anything vaccine related. That people even had issues with them.
So at this point too, I was still a good vaxxer. And I would even, it would be an argument or a point of contention between us and kind of dividing us a little bit as well. And I think that's...
What were you thinking?
Wasn't. I mean, I was just thinking like, well, like she said earlier, we got vaccinated when we were earlier. All the doctors are telling us it's okay.
Why would they lie?
Yeah, exactly.
All those same sort of things.
Yeah.
Let me just put a light on here so you're getting feeling a bit dark. I don't know how to do it. Wait, let me see if this will work.
All right.
Okay, this is what happens when I'm on my own in the bath. I have no idea how to turn the light on in this
You're
place.
good.
No. Let's try that. That'll
Yeah,
do.
that works.
Okay.
That works
There we
good.
go. Sorry, carry on.
Yeah, so
Woo! There we are.
Got 'em back.
Lights everywhere.
we went in at her 6-month shots, and when she was 7.5 months old, and all I just remember was like downhill health from that point on. I remember the next day, it wasn't uncommon for her to struggle eating, but it was like from the moment she woke up. I remember she didn't eat until like 4 o'clock that afternoon. She wouldn't nurse at all. I couldn't get her any solids. I was calling the doctor because when they're little, you worry about dehydration, you worry about all of that. And then she kept catching sicknesses, like one sickness after another. She was vomiting a lot during the day, at night.
How old is she at this point?
7.5, 8 months old.
And is she smiling at you? Sort of. Is she doing all the right things mentally?
Oh yeah.
For the most
She
part,
was
yeah.
already at this
She was
point saying
speaking.
words, and then by 9 months she was saying full phrases.
So she wasn't affected in that way at all. It was more just she was actually medically sick.
She was medically sick.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it wasn't, I wouldn't say I saw neurological things, but I do remember when I was telling her, functional medicine doctor, that I remember at that point, like, because I would Google it, like I would rub her little head, because I held her a lot throughout the night. She was just always sick. And she had these little that like would pop up all over her head. And when I would Google it, it was like, oh, it's the lymph nodes. And there's lymph nodes, I guess, on your brain and behind your ears, and they were swollen. They were swollen, and I remember feeling them. And then when she was 3.5 months old, I had gone into the doctor specifically because right above her frontal, she had a big bump, and they couldn't explain it. The doctor was concerned, but said, you know, she seems to be meeting her milestone. She seems to be, you know, happy for the most part, you know. So we'll just wait and see if something happens with that. I don't want to put her under radiation to get a brain scan. But I look back and I just have so many questions in regards to all of that. So she kept getting sick. I remember I was having trouble getting solid foods in her. About 10 months old, she started eating solids again. I could give her Cheerios and Mum Mums and cheese, like sliced cheese, and so we were kind of in a good place, and went in for her 12-month shots. And I don't think it was I don't think it was.
Do you have her medical records?
I do.
So you do know, really?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, got it.
Yeah, there is.
Just don't remember.
Just
don't
don't remember right
remember.
now. That's fine. So she had her 12-month shots.
She had her 12-month shot, and it was right after her birthday, and just to be honest, I can't say for certain that it was the shot, but I have so many questions at this point. We started cow's milk on the same day that she got her vaccine, and she was eating cheese, she was eating yogurt, she was eating things with cow's milk in it.
Before.
And
For 3 months.
For three,
But she
yeah,
actually
for a
tried.
couple months. Yeah, so she had it. That had been. Loved it. She was eating it.
Cheddar cheese was her favorite.
Well, it's
thing.
not the vaccine, so it must be the milk.
It
That's
must
what
be
they're going
the-
to say.
that's
I mean,
what
you
they
just
will
gave
say.
them the
I
perfect
know.
way out.
I know, and it's true.
exactly
But she got the seaweed grain diarrhea. Acid burns on her bottom was a non-stop issue from that point. Lots of vomiting, stopped eating. At that point is when I can say she stopped looking at me.
She regressed into not talking at all.
She went to not talking at all.
Okay, I can guarantee you it's the vaccines.
Yeah, she wasn't
This is
smiling.
the same.
Yeah.
This is the same set of regression that we get in all our kids.
All the time, and I remember telling him, like, she's just not happy.
And then what was her next recommendation? Oh, we'll try soy milk. So we tried soy milk.
Well, they had us, wait for a
no.
month and retry cow's milk, and the seaweed green diarrhea, all that stuff came back. She's very allergic to cow's milk these days. They had us try soy, and within 4 days she was vomiting
Not
nonstop.
surprised.
Yeah, projectile.
From that. She was diagnosed with a condition called food protein enterocolitis syndrome. She's struggled.
Please tell me you're away from these pediatricians now.
This particular
Because
one.
have you not
Good at
noticed the
that part of
pattern
the
of
story.
every
Yes.
single time you go back, they screw your child up a little bit more?
It's a denial of it. It kind of do. And she didn't, even with the food stuff, it was like, it's probably not that. It was a virus. It was always a virus. Oh, it probably wasn't a milk. It was a
The
virus.
pediatrician came highly recommended by multiple doctors and other.
They're the worst, by the way.
Well, we know that now.
Yeah, we all know that now.
It got recommended by family members in addition. So going back, and she's getting to the part of the story where we made that decision to cut the cord and go to a different pediatrician.
Well, it happened when we started going to specialists. So when Annie was, yeah, it started. Well, we had the conversations before, but that's when we found a new pediatrician.
We didn't even get to go to the allergist until after we cut the cord. So we know for a fact that was not.
He just confirmed the same pediatrician. You might be right.
He's the one that gave us a recommendation that was the same recommendation for another pediatrician. But what happened was she had gone in and expressed concern about vaccines to this pediatrician, and the pediatrician basically, I don't know how to say it nicely, but really just went off on her.
I went by myself at this point.
Went off on you? The pediatrician went off on you?
Well, and I was a stay-at-home mom, and that was when I said I can't handle any more vaccines. So Annie became failure to thrive. She wasn't eating. I couldn't get her to eat anything. She was still breastfeeding. She was 15 months old. We finally, at that point, got referred to a GI specialist. We got to the GI specialist, and she just looked at us like, "Why are you just now here? Like, why weren't you here forever ago?"
Yeah.
Yeah, she wasn't talking.
She was advanced ahead of my daughter, who's 2 days younger than her, so her verbal skills were superior at 9, 10, 11 months. And between the 12 months and the 15 months, she lost a lot of her
stopped. Yeah, she just completely stopped.
That must be absolutely devastating.
It was, I didn't even know what to think. I didn't know. I had never heard autism stories. I hadn't heard a single one. And I remember sitting in her GI appointment, and I'm going over, she's had like 5 ear infections. We've had all these antibiotics, and that was all after 6 months, and kept going. And I was like, every time we go to the pediatrician, she has another ear infection. I was like, is that related somehow? And, she's all of these things. And I look back now, and I was like, I was telling her these autism stories, and I didn't even know that that's a typical story that happens.
We didn't know until probably a year after that.
No, we were put on like amino-based formulas to try to give her. I was still breastfeeding. She was allergic to all of them.
Was she put on that awful Pediasure stuff?
They tried that at first, and it was she got really sick.
Kate was the one.
We did Pediasure. We did
Neocate.
We did get to Neocate and Elecare.
That's right.
But she had allergic reactions to both of them. She started getting hives at that point.
At this point, the pediatrician, while she went off on my wife, also told her it was absolutely impossible to have an allergic reaction to these formulas. And so that was when she came home. She told me about how she went off on her. I was like, "Listen, this is weird. We're done with this pediatrician. We're going to take documentation. Mm-hmm. She gets hives when you give it to her. Give it to her one more time." Took a picture with her phone of the hive. Mm-hmm. Went in, said, "We just want a recommendation to an allergist and a referral to an allergist." And then we went to the allergist and got a new pediatrician.
Yeah, that same appointment though, where she went off with me. And Michael started going with me to every single appointment from that point on. It was she was due for her 15-month vaccines. And she was sick. She was failure to thrive. We were getting all these random hives. She was vomiting. And when I say vomiting, it was all the time. Mm-hmm. It was constant, almost every night, just nonstop. And this was with part of her FPIES condition. I look back now, and my son has vomited maybe twice. And it was little, this was just an everyday occurrence for us. And but so I went back, and she wanted to give her these 15-month shots, and I was just like, she's sick. She's sick. Every time we give her these shots, we have a really hard time, minimum for 3 weeks. Every step that we make in progress goes backward, and she's not in a good place at all right now. And the pediatrician walked out of the room, comes back with those papers that they make you sign, and I went home and I told Michael, I was like, I looked over I signed them because I didn't know anything about anything, and but I was like, it basically just said I'm an idiot for not listening to her, is what it said. I was like, it basically said I'm a moron for not taking her advice.
Didn't you want to go in there and have a little chat with the pediatrician?
When he was mad at that point, he was like, I'm going every time with you.
That's my normal reaction. However, we've watched other very close friends of ours in another situation have an issue with CPS that there's no
it's
They
not
have
really
a
so.
daughter. Yeah, they have a
Good
daughter
point,
with,
good point,
with
good
Ehlers-Danlos
point.
syndrome.
Which just shows how dark these people are.
Yeah.
we walked through that with them, and so
we were
that's why
kinda
I was
scared of
extremely
anything
protective at that point. I was like, look, we're not saying anything else. We're showing them documentation. We're getting the referral, and then we're walking out. That's it.
And
The
we
change in background of the light is a generator coming in and out.
Yeah.
I think I prefer it dark, actually, like it is now. But anyway, do carry on.
You're
I have no
good.
idea that...
Yeah, no, you are good. The allergist and the GI specialist both recommended a new pediatrician, and we started once we got the FPIES diagnosis, all those things, and I was going on to boards, support group boards for these types of conditions. These parents helped me figure out what I could feed my daughter. They said, journal everything, give everything a number if she's having diarrhea, if she's having acid rashes, if she's having vomiting, if she's having eczema, if she's having, there's like a whole list of things, and number your days and figure out, basically the days that she has that are better, figuring out exactly what you're giving her, what you're eating. I'm still breastfeeding her at that point because she doesn't eat, and that's the only thing I can get her to eat. And we figured out a baseline of foods that she could have, and she started gaining weight. She went from the 0 to the 20th percentile. I go back to the GI specialist, and they're like, oh, well, I guess keep doing what you're doing, And I started asking at that point about gut health. I was like, what do you think about this? I keep hearing rumors about gut health, and it was just kind of, she was a wonderful GI. She really was super sweet, but just not trained that way. And just like, well, some people think it's everything, some people think it means nothing, and she never advised anything about gut health. It was just get
We're
her.
at a gastroenterologist, and she didn't advise anything about gut health. So let's just think that one in.
It was like, try to give her some heavy foods. Give her Nutella and French fries and donuts, whatever
She
she'll
said
eat.
give her donuts, Nutella,
Yeah,
and French fries.
anything fattening.
I can't even.
Yeah, anything that'll just give her.
Even the
fattening.
bus groaned at that one,
This
and the
was
generator went off.
the nutritionist that she sent us to said the same thing. We just want fatty, dense foods, and so I figured out all the other stuff from these boards, and anyway, so from that point on, this new pediatrician is super nice and was like, I do think that kids, just like medicine, vaccines affect kids differently. And she's like, we can do one at a time. And at that point we were comfortable with one at a time, and we did one at a time, and she would recover more quickly. We were able to pinpoint various vaccines that she seemed to struggle with, like the Hib vaccine always gave her GI issues, and they say it's not supposed to, like it's not oral, it shouldn't give GI issues, but it happened to her and my son the same way. They reacted. She did get her MMR, and that one, I didn't know anything about that either, and I look back and I have a lot of questions with that one in my mind at this point. She broke out in a rash from head to toe within 8 hours, and a fever. She didn't scream and stuff like she did in the past, but I did call and I said, she has this rash, she gets hives from lots of things. Are these hives?
We all got pink eye, right?
Yeah, I was like, is this due to the MMR vaccine? And they said, well, it's not the vaccine, because that rash shows up a week and a half later. This is an allergic reaction. So she had an allergic reaction to it. Within a few days, she was just very sick. She was vomiting. She got pink eye. And I started looking up symptoms, and I was like, does she have a mild, like, measles, mumps, or rubella? Does she have one of those conditions?
That's impossible.
And they said, no, that's absolutely impossible. That doesn't happen ever. And she started, and this is something that no doctor has been able to explain, but I wonder now when I listen to all the stories, I was like, was she having seizures? Because at that point at night, she started doing this thing where she would vomit at night, and she would lie there while she was asleep, and she would choke on it. She wouldn't move her head.
Petrifying.
It was petrifying. And so, there were years I just didn't sleep because I would just listen to that monitor, because all you would hear is a cough, like and then it was, of her choking, and I would run in there, and if that would start, then I'd basically sleep with her for the next week, because every time it would happen, I'd have to lift her up, and
Awful.
she wouldn't do it on her own. It would happen throughout the entire night. And this went on for a year, you know, where anytime she caught any virus, this thing would happen. And I look back now and I was like, were those seizures? Like, I don't know. And she got the petechia or whatever, which can happen from the MMR, where you get those little, they look like meningitis type blood spots, rashes. But anyway, she's basically, all of that to say, she has lots of food allergies. If I start naming them, it's like milk, soy, grapes, broccoli,
It's a lot easier to name
tuna.
what she can eat, not what she can't eat.
Yeah, Brussels sprouts. I mean, just to get an idea, it's very, we have to we make all of her food from scratch. We find out about cross-contamination, like if it happens accidentally, because she reacts. And so I'll call my allergist and say, we've changed nothing. All of a sudden, she's having reactions again, and I don't know why. And he's found one, like the chocolate chips were contaminated with dried fruit, because she's allergic to so many fruits and vegetables. And
still now to this day.
Still now to this day.
Is that how? Is it going to be?
She can't go to school.
How you
Yeah,
do it?
we homeschool. She can't go to school. She has a low immune system. She gets sick constantly. She catches everything.
It's just awful.
It's
These are the
insane.
kind of things, my stories.
Yeah.
The kind of things that people just don't realise.
Yes. Yeah.
On YouTube, I don't know.
And so we're very brand loyal. We can't travel unless we bring all of our food, because if they don't have a specific kind of turkey, there might be something in it that she's sick to.
Okay, I'm looking around the bus now to see if there's anything.
Yeah. You're fine.
I was already checking.
Yeah. But
Terrible though, isn't it?
yeah, we have to look around. We'd go to like Dillard's, and we go to get her a new pair of shoes, and she was little, and she'd roll around on the ground somewhere and break out in hives. And so, that happened a lot. Michael would come home and give her a kiss, and she'd break out with hives. We'd buy something from like a consignment shop or something, like a little top, and put it on her before we washed it, and she'd break out in hives. But all of that to say, I mean, the good news in all of that right now is, I guess I can lead into Miss Lindsay right here. Miss Lindsay has a daughter that is 1 day younger than Annie. So she was born just a day after, in the same city, but we didn't know each other at the time. We met here in Oklahoma City.
We both had kids in Dallas.
We both had kids in Dallas, and they were months, weren't it?
9.
For
You
the
were
9
right
months.
in the throes of I just remember her as a mom asking, does your daughter throw up all the time? Does your daughter? And I remember thinking, no, like,
Yeah.
no, it's
No.
not. And so I'll say our lives are for life, and I'll let y'all, if you keep going with yours.
No, I mean, but it helps to, so
How did you guys actually meet?
we met at a church mom's.
We were both, we moved, we had daughters within a day or two of each other, and then we moved from Dallas to Oklahoma City. We knew nobody, and so we ended up at this church moms group, and we both walked in looking really haggard.
We're tired.
So we bonded immediately.
Yes.
And,
And we had a lot of things to talk about of parenthood. It was really hard.
but it was a divine appointment, because our lives, as I share my story, they overlapped. And
A whole lot.
That took it from, and I think in my reading, as I began to 2 years later walk through a different but somewhat similar journey, we began to discuss, this cannot be genetics. Genetics don't cause epidemics, and I started looking into epigenetics and understanding that whole line is not right. It's false, and it's not just one kid in a group of 15. It's 1 out of 4. So. Anyway,
And Lindsay
carry
was
on.
questioning vaccines from the get-go, and she vaccinated her children too. But she would always say, "I just don't know. I don't have a good feeling about this. I don't know about it." And I was always telling her, Annie reacts and she has a hard time, but they're supposed to save them from all these horrible
Good
things.
citizens.
Yeah, I believed in them for some crazy reason. But she would meet with her doctor and be like, tell me why they're good. Tell me why I should do this. Have you heard about the fetal cells? And it was, years later after we were vaccinated that I heard about that. And, as Christians, we're like, what? How is this, why is the church not saying anything? And if this is in these vaccines, why aren't they saying anything?
We got a lot of work to do on
We have a
church.
lot of work.
And for those of you listening and at home that don't know this yet, there's aborted fetal cells in every single vaccine.
Not every vaccine,
Oh,
but
I'm sorry.
in
every
several of
single.
them. Yes, in several of them.
We watched Marcella Piper Terry has done loads of really good
Yes,
Hers is so good.
we watched it.
bits on it. Yeah.
Yes, and so she had always been questioning it. When I got pregnant with my son, he was a sweet little surprise when Annie was about 2, and I was scared to death. And it was one of those things like, God, I'm gonna have to trust you with this because we can't handle this. We have no idea, what to expect. We don't know if he's gonna have similar issues, and at that point we thought genetics, we thought all those things, and I was going to keep vaccinating him normally because I just figured I'm not going to put all that fear onto him if he doesn't have it. If we start seeing things, I'll know how to change that earlier. Michael, the weekend before he was born, went into this fury of research on vaccines, and he was just like, Stephanie, I don't know that we should be doing this. And we watched a documentary or a speaking event that Mary Taco, I don't know if you've heard of her, she did, and she was a chiropractor, and she didn't vaccinate her children, and it was super eye-opening, and it was just kind of, we looked at each other like, this makes a lot of sense, but we don't have the tools in our toolbox that she does. How do our kids get sick, how do we take care of it? And
Well, even at that point, we weren't at the point where like, oh, no more
no
vaccines.
more vaccines. But
We kind of narrowed it down. We figured out that the Hep B was the one.
we started talking about the Hep B at that point, and we were like, did that cause
And
some
that
of
was
our
whenever
issues?
I looked at it, I was like, well, what is this vaccine, and what is hepatitis B? And it's like,
Yeah.
what? A sexually transmitted disease? Like, this doesn't
Why
even
do
make
we-
any
why
sense.
do we need
Why
this?
do we need this?
But when you start Googling it, it's not like immediately following you'll read, oh, well, somebody could be infected that's handling food, and you can get it that way. And so you start, you don't know what to believe. We had him, I was able to do a VBAC with him, had him in the hospital. We said, we don't want to vaccinate him. I didn't know about vitamin K. I didn't, Annie, I'm sure, had
None
it.
of us did.
Yeah, I had no idea it's a vitamin, you think. And so,
I guess I still don't know.
yeah, when we said no Hep B, they brought in like a little army of nurses to talk us out of it and to make us get the Hep B. And Michael's a lot feistier than I am, and he's pretty convincing when he's feisty. And they left. And then they came in with the vitamin K. Well, he needs the vitamin K. And Michael, I don't even know what possessed him to do it, but he said, can I see the box? Can I see the vaccine insert? We knew nothing about this stuff. And I remember seeing the black box warning on the vitamin K, and he was like, there's aluminum and there's this, but and they kept saying, it doesn't do anything, it's safe. And I'm like a peacemaker. I'm like, we're not doing Hep B. Surely vitamin K is not going to hurt. And we did vitamin K. He didn't have the stuff that Annie did in the hospital at all. He was just easy. He slept, he nursed, he was 9 pounds. He was just healthy. And what we decided to do with him is just do one at a time, a vaccine with him. We did DTaP and Prevnar. That's what his pediatrician said.
Prevnar.
Yes.
Have you looked up what the hell Prevnar is?
Yes, now I know. Now I know.
There is no
I
one at a
didn't.
time with DTaP or Prevnar.
Yes, exactly. And but that was our compromise then. And he does have some gut issues, and he does have some allergies, and he does get some hives, but it's minimal compared to our daughter. And we showed up in this is where Lindsay falls in. Like last summer, she sends me this book. You have to read it. It's the 4A Disorder by Kenneth Bach.
I love Ken Bach. He's the one who helped Bill at the beginning. I'd never hear his name anymore. You guys are going to be the first people that brought Ken Bach's name up. Is he still going?
Read the book.
Yes,
Yeah.
I believe so.
Read the book. It's the biggest.
It's
Healing
amazing.
Childhood epidemics.
And if you look
Autism,
at the
He's great.
Allergies,
asthma,
Asthma,
ADHD, and autism.
He's a
And if
great
you look
guy.
at his reviews on it, they're all his patients. They're like, he helped us. He saved us from this. He's incredible. And so she sent me that book, and I just remember getting to the section where it talked about the metals and vaccines. And I was glued to that book. I kept turning every page. I couldn't put it down, and I was in shock. And so we had just not gone to the pediatrician for a while, and so they, even on the one at a time, we had just not been doing vaccines at that point. And then I got onto my friend recommended the Oklahoma Vaccine and Health Choice webpage last November. That was just like drinking from a fire hose. Like people start talking about these things and the resources, and we watched The Greater Good. And at that point, like when I watched The Greater Good, I just remember walking away and bawling my eyes out and telling Michael, that sweet little girl that died. It's like, I don't know why that wasn't us, because she had all the same things.
Did you meet the mother today?
Was she out there today?
Yeah, the Greater Good mom.
No, I didn't.
Stephanie.
Yeah, I know who she is, but I've watched stuff she's done with Yin. But so that was really eye-opening. We watched Vaccines Revealed, we watched Vaxxed, and all of a sudden we had solid support that backed up what we had seen. And she has a doctor she had been going to in Dallas, a functional integrative medicine doctor down there, and had been recommending her. We saw her in February, and I had sent her all these pages of history, and I said, I want to get both of my children in there. I just know we're broken health-wise. We're broken, and we need to set this sail right, and I think you can help us do this. I sent her like a 9-page letter describing in detail what we had gone through and where our child was and is. And we sat for 4 hours at that first appointment, and she's going over our history. She's asking us 1,000 questions, and 5 times she said, I'm amazed that there's this little girl that's happy and looks healthy and talking and alive and not severely autistic. She said it 5 times. And she said there's no doubt she was absolutely injured from the Hep B vaccine. And we were just like, yes, we're learning all these things about vaccines. And I told Michael I never expected a doctor to say that. You know, at that point we were kind of feeling that stuff on our own.
Let alone the one that's got an MD on their name.
Not let alone one that actually has an MD after their name. And when we left that day, I was like, I think I always thought I would feel validated, and I left with such a deep sadness. And I went home and bawled, and I was like, this happened. This is real. This affected us, and this is a big part of our story. And we were told for the longest time there's no way, when we were asking over and over and over. But yeah, all that to say, we obviously don't vaccinate now.
Is there anything that would make you vaccinate your children?
No.
If I was dead?
Yeah.
Wait, no.
Yeah.
Not even that.
Yeah, there's not.
There can't be, not after you've even just looking at this bus.
Yes. Well, and
You
that's.
have to. Now, will they say hello to us?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Annie and Kayla, do you want to
Say
say
hi.
hi? Say hi. Can you go say hi? I'm scared.
Oh, you don't need to be scared.
Do you want
Here,
to
bud.
say hi?
Come here.
Hi.
Come to show the world
Who said they were scared? Him?
I'll see if
Oh no, she said that. Hi.
This is
How
Caleb.
old is he?
Caleb is 2.
He is so cute.
Can you say hi?
Hi. Hi.
Sit there, Mama.
And this is
What's your
Amy.
name? That's a lovely name, Annie. And the lights have gone out
Sit on
again.
Mama's side.
Well, we just want to say hi to you because we've been hearing how wonderful you are. You've got beautiful hair. And he just didn't really have very much. He's doing real fine.
He's doing really, really well. He's got his gut health. There's a few sensitivities that we're working on. He has gotten hives from like a change in diaper wipes at one time.
So if you were to have another baby, no, not a thing.
No, I mean, all we're doing now is collecting all these natural things. Like if we get measles, like we need vitamin A. Like
Oh, Dr. Suzanne's writing a book on all of that. Don't worry, you've
yes,
got time.
we do vitamin C. We do. We're switching. We love our pediatrician, but we're switching
Yes, you can. You're so beautiful.
We're doing
Oh,
switching.
she's so sweet, so polite.
Thank you. we're switching to a pediatrician that does like treats things with homeopathy and all kinds of. Lindsay's already there. She's saving us from all of this stuff.
Come on, dragging them
And
up.
no, and we're super grateful. She is a big part of why we even are aware.
Oh, yeah.
So you're the next interview, are you?
Yep.
You're stuck with me, and then you can go eat dinner.
Is that no, are you the
Sorry.
final
I'm the
interview?
final
And
one.
this,
Oh my
this
gosh,
is from
Pip.
her too.
You
So the
survived.
drinks in that is from.
Oh, I
Lindsay
ate
too.
loads of that. Thank you.
Please.
I'm just sitting here snacking.
Yes.
God bless you, Holly, and for everybody. I mean,
Yes.
as parents, we've sat on the other side of this camera so much.
And that's why I told Lindsay walking
Baby
up
numbers.
here. I was like, I didn't know if I would cry, but just seeing this, like, the
Where
impact,
are they gone?
It's amazing.
Your family?
Did they all Uber away?
They're done.
They might have gone to get pizza.
They were
I
asking
don't
about
know.
what pizza place is good, so.
I know they were.
Looking for a
He's your
gluten-free
driver,
pizza
though,
place.
right?
Oh, wait, whatever.
You're
I think we should leave the bus here outside the capital anyway.
Yeah, I know.
Lock it up.
With that, I just put a note saying, give me a call if you need us to move it.
Yeah, for real.
Let me know.
Or if you'd like to have a meeting to discuss.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, they've gone to some, Bella wouldn't let them go to Arby's. Are you kidding me? They've gone to some organic, gluten-free number.
Yeah.
Right, now, are we coming off to a new story?
I think you guys want to go with them.
Yeah,
instead
well-
of-
No, I mean, do you want to carry on this scope and keep talking? Or should I turn
Hers
these
is
cameras off
different. It might
and come back
you
on?
can cut it off and start
Okay,
over if
okay,
that's
guys,
your thing.
coming back for the last story. One more, Paige. One more.
She's amazing.
We have got some more tomorrow, though.
They're
'cause-
coming back here tomorrow.
Well, not here.
At the
They're coming
hotel.
back to. They're going